know that feeling when something's wrong, but you can't put your finger on it? Like when you're walking alone at night, and you swear someone's following you, but every time you turn around, there's nothing there. I'm Sean, and I've been driving for Uber for about 3 years now. Seen all kinds of weird stuff. Drunk college kids, people having breakdowns, couples fighting, you name it. But what happened to me last Tuesday night? I still can't sleep properly. And the worst part? I'm starting to think I might be losing my mind. Because according to Uber, the route I took that night doesn't exist. It was around 11:47 p.m. when I got the ping. I remember the exact time because I've been having a slow night and was thinking about calling it quits. The pickup was at Murphy's Pub on Henderson Street. Nothing unusual there. I'd picked up dozens of people from Murphy's over the years. Just your typical neighborhood bar, nothing fancy. I pulled up outside and waited. You know how it is. You sit there with your hazards on, scrolling through your phone, waiting for whoever to stumble out. The street was pretty quiet for a Tuesday. Few cars parked along the curb, couple of streetlights flickering like they always do in that part of town. Then this guy comes out, mid-30s maybe, average height, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. Nothing that stood out about him except, well, he was completely sober, like stone cold sober. In 3 years of picking people up from bars, I can count on one hand the number of completely sober passengers I've had. He got in the back seat without saying a word, just slid in and closed the door real quiet-like. I turned around to do my usual greeting. "Hey, how's it going? I'm Sean," but something about his expression stopped me. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring straight ahead, like he was seeing something I couldn't see. Where we headed tonight? I asked, trying to keep it light. He gave me an address, 4247 Millfield Road. I punched it into my GPS, 32 minutes. Straight shot mostly on the highway, then some back roads toward the outskirts. Pretty standard late-night ride. The fare would be decent too, which I needed after such a slow evening. We pulled out onto Henderson and started making our way toward the on-ramp. I tried making small conversation, asked if he had a good night, how the weather was treating him, the usual driver stuff, but he wasn't having it. Just sat there in complete silence, hands folded in his lap. Now I get it. Not everyone wants to chat with their Uber driver. Some people just want to get where they're going in peace. But this felt different. The silence wasn't comfortable. It was thick, like when you're in a library and someone's watching you from across the room. About 15 minutes in, we're cruising down Highway 74, and I glance in my rear view mirror. He's still staring straight ahead, but now he's got his phone out. The screen is cracked pretty badly. Looks like someone took a hammer to it. But what caught my eye was the light coming off it. It was red, not like a notification light, but the whole screen was just red, like it was bleeding light. I figured maybe he was watching a video or something, but he wasn't moving his thumb around like you do when you're scrolling, just holding it, staring at that red glow. That's when he spoke for the second time. Take the next exit. I looked at my GPS. Actually, we stay on the highway for another 12 miles. The route's got us dash. Take the next exit. His voice was flat. No emotion, no explanation. Now, I've had passengers change their minds about routes before. Maybe they know a shortcut. Maybe they want to avoid construction, whatever. It's not a big deal. But something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. It wasn't a request. It was an instruction. The exit was coming up in about half a mile. I could see the sign, Route 45 North. I'd never taken that exit before, but my GPS was already recalculating, adding about 8 minutes to our trip. "Sure thing," I said, trying to sound casual. "Any particular reason? Construction or something?" He didn't answer. Route 45 North was different. The highway had been well lit, busy even for a Tuesday night. But this road was dark. I mean really dark. The kind of dark where your headlights feel like they're barely making a dent. Trees lined both sides, creating this tunnel effect that made me feel like we were driving through a throat. My GPS was getting confused. It kept trying to reroute us back to the highway, then switching to some route I'd never seen before. The blue that represents your car started jumping around erratically. "Left up here," he said. I looked ahead. There was a turnoff, but it wasn't marked. No street sign, no reflectors, just a gap in the trees that looked more like a logging road than anything meant for cars. "Are you sure?" "My GPS isn't showing dash." "Left." My hands were starting to sweat on the steering wheel. Every instinct I had was telling me this was wrong, but what was I supposed to do? Get into an argument with a passenger in the middle of nowhere? I took the left. The road, and I'm using that term loosely, was barely wide enough for my Honda Civic. Branches scraped against the windows as we went deeper into what was basically forest. My phone lost signal completely. The GPS just showed a gray screen with no route found. I tried to stay calm, told myself this guy probably lived in some rural area, maybe had a cabin or something. People live in weird places, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. How much further? I asked, try to keep the shake out of my voice. We're almost there. That's when I noticed something else in the rear view mirror. His reflection looked wrong, like the angle was off. When someone's sitting directly behind you, you should see them straight on in the mirror, but his reflection was tilted, like he was leaning to one side. Even though when I glanced back directly, he looked perfectly upright. The road curved sharply to the right, then left, then right again. I was completely turned around. Had no idea which direction we were even facing anymore. The trees seemed to be getting thicker, pressing closer to the car. Then my headlights caught something that made my blood turn to ice. There were other cars, old ones, rusted out, sitting among the trees like they'd been there for years. A blue pickup truck with the windshield smashed in, a sedan with the doors hanging open. I counted at least 4 or 5 vehicles, all of them looking like they'd been abandoned for decades. What is this place? I whispered, more to myself than to him. He didn't answer, but in the mirror, I saw him smile for the first time all night. It wasn't a happy smile. The road opened up into a clearing. My headlights swept across dead grass and more abandoned cars scattered around like a junkyard. In the center of the clearing was this concrete structure, maybe an old foundation or something. It was covered in graffiti and stains I didn't want to think about. "Stop here," he said. I stopped the car, but kept it in drive, foot on the brake. Every cell in my body was screaming at me to gun it and get the hell out of there. "Look, man, I don't know what this is, but I think we need to dash. Turn off the engine. I'd rather keep it running, if that's okay. You know, just in case dash. Turn. Off. The engine." His voice had changed. It was deeper now, with this edge to it that made my teeth ache. In the rear view mirror, his eyes were reflecting my headlights like an animal's. I reached over and turned off the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. No traffic, no city sounds, just a tick-tick-tick of the cooling engine and something else. A sound I couldn't quite place. Like dripping. "I need you to get out of the car," he said. That's when I finally found my backbone. No way. I'm not getting out of this car. I don't know what kind of situation this is, but I'm not Dash. I turned around to look at him directly, and my words died in my throat. The back seat was soaking wet. Water, at least I hoped it was water, was dripping from the upholstery onto the floor mats. The smell hit me then. Stagnant pond water mixed with something rotten, like fish that had been dead for weeks. But he wasn't wet. His clothes were completely dry. "Get out of the car, Sean." He knew my name. I'd never told him my name. I fumbled for the door handle, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip it. The interior light came on when I opened the door, and I saw him clearly for the first time since we'd left the highway. His skin was gray. Not pale, not sickly, gray like concrete. And his eyes were completely black. No iris, no pupil, just black holes in his face. I stumbled out of the car, and immediately started backing away. "What do you want? What is this place?" He got out of the back seat in one fluid motion. No sound of the door opening or closing. Just suddenly he was standing on the other side of the car, watching me. "You brought me home," he said. His voice echoed even though we were in an open space. "This isn't the address you gave me. This isn't 4247 Millfield Road." He tilted his head like a curious dog. "Isn't it?" I pulled out my phone, hoping against hope that I might have gotten signal back. The screen was cracked, just like his had been. When did that happen? I'd had my phone in my pocket the whole time. "My car," I said, backing toward the tree line. "I need my car." "No," he said simply. "You don't." That's when I ran. I crashed through the underbrush, branches tearing at my clothes and face. Behind me, I could hear nothing. No footsteps, no pursuit, just that dripping sound getting louder and louder. I ran until my lungs were on fire, until I couldn't take another step. When I finally stopped and looked back, there was nothing there. No clearing, no abandoned cars, no concrete structure. Just trees stretching in every direction, and no road. I wandered through those woods for what felt like hours, completely lost, using my phone's flashlight even though the battery was dying. Finally, I found a real road, a paved county road with actual street signs. A trucker picked me up around 4 a.m. and drove me back to town. My car was gone. When I reported it stolen, the police took a report, but they seemed confused about my story. They kept asking me to clarify where exactly I'd been, what road I'd taken. When I tried to explain about the passenger and the route we'd taken, they exchanged these looks like they thought I was having some kind of breakdown. 3 days later, they found my Honda. It was in the parking lot of Murphy's Pub, right where I'd started that night. Keys still in the ignition. Everything exactly as I'd left it, except for the back seat. The upholstery was completely destroyed. Not torn or cut, dissolved. Like something corrosive had been sitting there for months. The fabric was stiff and discolored, and it smelled like that same rotten pond water. But here's the thing that really messes with my head. When I tried to log into my Uber account to report what had happened, I got an error message. My account had been suspended pending investigation. I called customer service, and after being on hold for 2 hours, some guy told me that according to their GPS records, I'd taken a route that doesn't exist on any mapping system. The trip showed me driving through areas that are marked as protected wilderness, places where no roads have ever been built. And the address? 4247 Millfield Road? There is no Millfield Road. There never has been. I looked it up myself. The area where that address should be is part of the Harwick Wildlife Sanctuary. It's been protected wilderness for over 40 years. No human settlements within 15 kilometers. So here I am, 2 weeks later, still trying to figure out what happened to me that night. I've driven past Murphy's Pub a dozen times since then, but I can't bring myself to stop, because sometimes, late at night when I'm lying in bed, I can still smell that rotten water smell on my clothes. And sometimes, when I'm not really paying attention, I catch myself in the mirror, and for just a split second, my reflection looks tilted. I don't drive for Uber anymore. Hell, I barely drive at all these days, because I keep thinking about something he said. "You brought me home." What if I didn't pick up a passenger that night? What if something picked up me? I used to think that was just anxiety. Urban living does that to you, right? Makes you jumpy. Makes you see things that aren't there. I don't think that anymore. My name's Marcus, and I've been living in Chicago for about 6 years now. Working tech, nothing fancy. Just debugging code and trying to make rent like everyone else in the city. I drive a 2018 Honda Civic. Silver, reliable as hell. Had it for 3 years. Never gave me any problems. The thing is, I'm not the kind of guy who believes in ghost stories or supernatural bullshit. I mean, I'll watch a horror movie, sure, but when it's over, it's over. Reality kicks back in. Bills to pay, groceries to buy, normal life stuff. But what happened to me 3 weeks ago? I can't explain it. And trust me, I've tried. So it was a Tuesday night in November. I'd been seeing this girl, Sarah, for about a month. Nothing too serious yet, just casual dates. Getting to know each other. She lived in Lincoln Park. Nice area, tree-lined streets. The kind of neighborhood where people actually know their neighbors' names. We grabbed dinner at this little Thai place, walked around for a bit, talked about work, movies, the usual stuff. She was easy to talk to, you know? One of those people who actually listens when you speak. Anyway, around 10:30, she said she was getting tired, so I offered to drive her home. Her apartment was in this quiet residential block, mostly brownstones and small apartment buildings. Street parking only, and I found a spot right in front of her building. We sat in the car for maybe 10 minutes, just talking, neither of us really wanting the night to end yet. Eventually she said she should head up, early day tomorrow, and all that. I walked her to her door. Yeah, I know, old school, and she gave me a quick kiss goodnight. Nothing dramatic, just a sweet, simple moment. She disappeared into her building. I heard the door lock click behind her. I stood there for a second, just enjoying that good feeling you get after a nice date. The street was quiet, just a few windows glowing yellow in the buildings around me. Peaceful, you know? I got back in my car, started up, pulled away from the curb. It was 1:17 a.m. exactly. I remember because I glanced at the clock, thinking about whether I'd be tired at work the next day. I was maybe 3 blocks away, stopped at a red light, when I happened to glance in my rearview mirror, just checking traffic behind me, normal driving stuff. But I noticed something weird. There was a small patch of fog on the mirror, like when you breathe on glass, you know, that misty condensation that appears and then fades away. I looked at it for maybe 2 seconds, thinking that was odd. The heat was on in the car, but not blasting. And it was just November, not like it was freezing outside or anything. But I shrugged it off, reached up with my sleeve, and wiped the mirror clean. The light turned green. I drove on. 2 more blocks, another red light. I glanced up at the rear view again, and there it was. That same little patch of fog, right in the center of the mirror. Perfectly round, like someone had exhaled directly onto it. This time I actually turned around and looked at the back seat. Empty, of course. Just my gym bag on the floor. A couple of takeout containers I'd been meaning to throw away. Nothing unusual. But when I turned back around and looked in the mirror again, the fog was still there. And as I watched, it seemed to pulse, like it was getting slightly bigger and smaller in rhythm, like breathing. I shook my head, told myself I was being stupid. Maybe there was something wrong with the defrost system, or the mirror was just dirty. I wiped it clean again with my sleeve, this time scrubbing harder. The light turned green. I drove on, trying to focus on the road, on getting home to my apartment in Wicker Park. About 15 minutes left in the drive, but I kept glancing at that mirror. I couldn't help myself. And every time I looked, every single time, there was that fog, always in the same spot, always the same size. Never there when I wasn't looking, never lingering after I looked away. Only when my eyes were actually focused on the mirror. I started testing it. I'd deliberately look away for 30 seconds, then snap my eyes back to the mirror. Fog. Look away, count to 10, look back. Fog. It was like whatever was causing it could sense when I was watching. That's when the real anxiety started kicking in. My palms got sweaty on the steering wheel. I turned the radio up, tried to distract myself with some late-night talk show, but I could barely focus on what they were saying. I was about 10 minutes from home, driving down this stretch of North Avenue with barely any other cars around, when I heard it. A breath. Not my breath. I was holding my breath by then, trying to stay perfectly quiet so I could figure out what was happening. This was someone else's breath. Slow, deliberate, coming from directly behind me. I slammed on the brakes and pulled over to the curb so fast I almost jumped it. My heart was hammering. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, engine running. Tried to work up the courage to turn around. When I finally did, the back seat was still empty. But I swear I could feel something. Like that feeling you get when someone's standing behind you, even when you can't see them. The air felt occupied. I got out of the car and opened the back door. Looked under the seats, checked the floor, even popped the trunk. Nothing, absolutely nothing out of place. But when I got back in the driver's seat and looked in the rear view mirror, there was a fog again. And this time, I could swear I saw it moving. Not just the pulsing I'd noticed before, but actually shifting across the surface of the mirror like condensation running down glass. That's when I had what I thought was a smart idea. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app. If I was hearing things, the recording would prove I was just being paranoid. If I wasn't, well, at least I'd have evidence. I held the phone up toward the back seat and hit record. For the first 10 seconds, nothing. Just the sound of my own nervous breathing and the car's engine idling. I was starting to feel stupid when I heard it again. That breath, slow and measured, definitely not coming from me. And then, so quiet I almost missed it, a whisper. Turn left. I nearly dropped the phone. The voice was soft, gender neutral, but absolutely clear. 2 words spoken calmly, like someone giving directions to a friend. I stopped the recording and played it back immediately, hands shaking as I held the phone to my ear. 10 seconds of ambient car noise. My breathing, the engine, that's it, nothing else. I recorded it again, this time holding the phone steady and trying to control my breathing. Again, after about 10 seconds, I heard the whisper. This time it said, "Straight ahead." I played the recording back. Nothing but car sounds and my own breathing. I must have tried this 6 or 7 times. Each time, I heard the voice clearly. Each time, the playback was completely normal. It was like whatever was speaking could only be heard in real time in the moment, but left no trace afterward. And the commands kept coming, right at the next light. Slow down. Stop here. I realized with growing horror that I had been following the directions without thinking about it. The voice would tell me to turn, and I would turn. It would tell me to slow down, and I would ease off the gas, like I was on autopilot. But these weren't directions to my apartment. I had no idea where I was anymore. The streets looked unfamiliar, darker than the main roads I usually took. Fewer streetlights, more empty lots between buildings. I tried to ignore the voice, to just drive home using my own navigation. But every time I deviated from its directions, things got uncomfortable. When I took a right instead of the suggested left, the temperature in the car seemed to drop 10 degrees. When I sped up after being told to slow down, I heard what sounded like fingernails dragging across the inside of the rear window, and the fog on the mirror was getting bigger. What had started as a small circle was now covering nearly half the reflective surface. I couldn't see the cars behind me anymore, couldn't check my blind spots properly. "Pull over here," the voice whispered. I was on a side street now, lined with empty warehouses and chain-link fences. No pedestrians, no traffic. Just pools of yellow light from the occasional street lamp stretching into long shadows. "I'm not pulling over," I said out loud, feeling ridiculous for talking to empty air. "I'm going home." That's when I heard the laugh. Soft, almost amused, like someone who just heard a mild joke. It came from right behind my left ear, so close I felt the air move. I jerked away instinctively and swerved into the oncoming lane before correcting. There were no other cars around, but my heart was racing so fast I thought I might pass out. "Pull over," the voice repeated, and this time I felt something touch my shoulder. Not a hand, exactly. More like the pressure you'd feel if someone placed their palm just above your skin without quite making contact. But I could sense the shape of fingers, the warmth of a presence. I pulled over. I sat there with the engine running, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. In the rear view mirror, The fog had spread across the entire surface. I couldn't see anything behind me at all. "Turn around," the voice whispered. "No," I said. "Whatever you are, whatever you want, the answer is no." Another laugh, longer this time, almost fond. "Marcus," it said, and hearing my name in that soft, impossible voice nearly broke me. "Turn around." I turned around. The back seat was still empty, but on the inside of the rear window, pressed against the glass like someone had placed their hand there from outside the car, was a perfect handprint, pale, clearly defined, with long fingers that seemed to extend beyond what should have been physically possible. But here's the thing that really got to me. The handprint was on the inside of the window, which meant whatever had made it was inside the car with me, had been inside the car with me this whole time. I scrambled for the door handle, but before I could get out, the handprint began to move. The fingers stretched and contracted like someone was flexing their hand. Then, slowly, it began to write something in the condensation on the glass. Letters appeared one by one. S-R-H. Sarah, the girl I just dropped off. "What do you want with Sarah?" I whispered. The handprint moved again, writing below the first word, H-O-M-E. I understood immediately. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't random. It had been waiting for me, following me, and now it wanted me to take it back to Sarah's apartment. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not taking you anywhere near her." The temperature in the car plummeted. My breath started coming out in visible puffs. The handprint on the window pressed harder against the glass, and I heard a sound like ice cracking. "Home," the voice whispered, but this time it wasn't soft and calm. There was an edge to it, something desperate and hungry. I put the car in drive and floored it, not caring where I was going as long as it was away from Sarah's neighborhood. The handprint slapped against the window repeatedly, making sharp impacts that sounded like someone was trapped inside a box trying to get out. I drove for maybe 20 minutes, taking random turns, trying to lose whatever was in my car. But no matter where I went, the voice kept giving directions. Left here, right at the light, straight for 3 blocks. And I realized with growing terror that every direction was leading me in a wide circle back toward Lincoln Park, back toward Sarah's apartment. I tried calling her, but my phone went straight to voicemail. I tried texting, but the messages wouldn't send. It was like something was blocking all communication. The handprint on the rear window had multiplied. Now there were 3, then 5, then so many overlapping prints that the entire window was covered in pale impressions. They moved constantly, pressing and releasing, like dozens of hands trying to push through glass from inside. I was maybe 4 blocks from Sarah's street when I made a decision. I pulled over in front of a 24-hour gas station, bright fluorescent lights and security cameras everywhere. If something was going to happen, I wanted witnesses. I turned off the engine and sat in the sudden silence. No more whispers, no more movement from the back seat. Even the handprints on the window had faded away. For a moment, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe whatever had been in the car had given up and moved on. Then I looked in the rear view mirror, and staring back at me was a face. Pale, gaunt, with dark circles under its eyes and a mouth that stretched just a little too wide. It was pressed up against the glass of the mirror, like someone looking through a window, close enough that I could see every detail. But when I spun around to look at the back seat, there was nothing there. The face only existed in the reflection. "Take me home, Marcus," it said, and this time the voice came from the mirror itself. "Take me to Sarah." I grabbed my keys and bolted from the car, leaving the door open behind me. I ran into the gas station, and the kid behind the counter took one look at my face and asked if I was okay. "Call the police," I said. "There's someone in my car." He looked out the window at my Civic, driver's door hanging open, interior lights on. "I don't see anybody, man." "Look closer. In the back seat." He squinted through the glass. "It's empty, dude. You sure you're okay?" I looked for myself. From inside the gas station, my car looked completely normal. Just an empty vehicle with the door ajar. But I wasn't going back to it. Not yet. I bought a coffee and sat in the gas station for an hour, watching my car through the window. The kid behind the counter kept glancing at me like I was having some kind of breakdown, but he didn't say anything else. Around 3 a.m., I finally worked up the courage to go back outside. I approached the car slowly, keys ready, prepared to run if I heard so much as a whisper. The car was silent. I got in, started up, and drove straight home to my apartment. No voices, no fog on the mirror, no handprints. Just a normal drive through empty Chicago streets. When I got home, I immediately went to my laptop and pulled up the dashcam footage. I'd forgotten I even had a dashcam until that moment. It was one of those things you install and then never think about unless something happens. I scrubbed through the footage from that night, starting from when I dropped Sarah off. There I was, walking her to her door. There was a goodnight kiss. There was me getting back in the car and driving away. Everything looked normal until I got to the part where I pulled over for the first time to check the back seat. I watched myself get out of the car, open the rear door, look around, get back in, but just as I was closing the driver's door, for maybe half a second, there was something in the rear window. A pale hand, fingers spread wide, pressed against the inside of the glass. I rewound the footage and watched it again, frame by frame this time. The hand was there for exactly 3 frames of video, long enough to be clearly visible, but so brief that you'd miss it unless you were specifically looking for it. I took screenshots, enhanced the images, tried everything I could think of to get a better look, but the hand was always just clear enough to be unmistakably real, and just blurry enough that I couldn't make out any details. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't driven at night since then. I changed my work schedule so I can leave during daylight hours. I take Ubers if I have to go anywhere after dark, and I always sit in the front seat. I told Sarah what happened. Eventually, she was understanding at first, concerned about my mental health. Suggested I talk to someone, but when I showed her the dashcam footage, when she saw that pale hand in the rear window, her attitude changed. She moved out of her apartment 2 days later. Wouldn't tell me where she was going, just said she needed to get away from whatever that thing is. I haven't heard from her since. The really messed up part? My car has been doing things on its own. Every night at exactly 1:17 a.m., the time I drop Sarah off, I hear my car doors unlock. All 4 of them, one after another. Click, 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 click. I live on the 3rd floor, and my car is parked on the street below. But I can hear those locks from my bedroom, clear as day. And if I look out my window, I can see the interior light is on, like someone just got in. The first few times it happened, I went down to check. The car would be empty, doors locked again, everything normal. But the rear view mirror would be fogged up, and sometimes I'd find new handprints on the inside of the windows. I stopped checking after the 4th night, when I found something written in the condensation on the rear window. Sarah's address, followed by an address I'd never seen before. An address that, when I looked it up, led to a house that had been demolished 15 years ago. I've been thinking about selling the car, but I'm afraid of what might happen to whoever buys it. And honestly, I don't think it would make a difference. Whatever got into my car that night, I don't think it's tied to the vehicle. I think it's tied to me, because it's not just a car anymore. Sometimes I hear breathing in my apartment. Sometimes I catch glimpses of movement in mirrors and windows. And every night, whether I'm home or not, my phone gets a text message at 1:17 a.m. from a number that doesn't exist. The message is always the same. Where's Sarah? I've changed my number twice. Doesn't matter. The texts keep coming. I don't know what I picked up that night, or where it came from, or what it really wants with Sarah. But I know it hasn't given up. It's still with me, still waiting, still asking the same question over and over. Where's Sarah? And the worst part? I'm starting to want to tell it. Not because I want to hurt her. God, no. But because this thing, whatever it is patient. It's persistent. and I'm getting tired of fighting it every single day. Every night at 1:17, when those car doors unlock, when that text message comes through, when I hear that soft whisper asking about Sarah, a part of me thinks about how easy it would be to just give in, to start the car, drive to whatever address it shows me, and finally get what it wants. But I haven't. Not yet. The thing is, I don't know how much longer I can hold out, because whatever's been following me since that night, it's not going anywhere. It's got nothing but time, and sooner or later, my willpower's going to crack. And when it does, well, I just hope Sarah is somewhere far away when that happens. Look, I know how this is going to sound. I know you're probably thinking I'm some wannabe creepypasta writer or whatever, but I need to get this out there. My name's Finn, and 3 months ago, something happened to me that I can't explain. Something that's made me question everything I thought I knew about, well, about what's possible. I'm a night shift security guard at a warehouse complex on the outskirts of the city. Nothing glamorous, just me, a flashlight, and 8 hours of walking around making sure nobody's stealing copper pipes or spray, painting dicks on the walls. The pay's decent, and honestly, I like the quiet. Always have. But there's this one stretch of road I take home every night. Maple Street, if you know the area. It's this old residential street that cuts through to the main highway. Saves me about 10 minutes compared to going around. Most of the streetlights work fine, but there's this one spot, right over a storm drain about halfway down, where the light's been flickering for months. The city keeps saying they'll fix it, but you know how that goes. That flickering light is where I first saw him. It was a Tuesday night in late September. I remember because it was the first really cold night of fall, and I was already dreading winter. I'm coming down Maple Street like usual. Maybe going a little faster than I should, because I just wanted to get home and crash. As I'm approaching that busted streetlight, something catches my eye. There's a guy standing right next to the storm drain. Just standing there, arms at his sides, perfectly still, head tilted at this weird angle like he's listening for something. Now, it's like 3:30 a.m., so seeing anyone out is already strange, but this felt different. The way he was positioned, the way the flickering light kept casting these jerky shadows across his face. It looked almost theatrical, you know, like someone had placed him there. I slowed down as I passed, just curious more than anything. The guy was maybe in his 30s, wearing this faded blue jacket and dark jeans. His hair was kind of messy, like he'd been outside for a while. But what really stuck with me was how he was staring. Not at the ground, not at the drain, but straight ahead at the road. Straight at passing cars. Straight at me. I felt this little chill run down my spine. But I told myself I was being paranoid. Probably just some drunk guy walking home. Maybe waiting for an Uber or something. City's full of weird people doing weird things at weird hours. I've seen it all working security. But as I drove past, I couldn't shake the feeling that his eyes followed my car. In my rear-view mirror, I could see him still standing there, that flickering light making him look like something from an old horror movie. The next night, Wednesday, I'm coming down the same street, and there he is again. Same spot, same position, same clothes. Arms down, head tilted, staring at the road. This time I really slowed down. I mean, what are the odds, right? Same guy, same place, same time? I'm thinking maybe he lives nearby, maybe he works nights like me, and this is just his routine or something. People are creatures of habit. But when I looked closer, something felt off. His clothes looked exactly the same. Not just the same style, but like he hadn't moved since the night before. The jacket was wrinkled in the exact same places. His hair was messed up in exactly the same way. I drove on, but I kept checking my mirrors. He never moved, not even a little. Just kept staring at where my car had been. Thursday night, same thing. Friday night, same thing. By Saturday, I was starting to really pay attention. I'd slowed down to maybe 15 miles per hour as I approached, really studying this guy. And here's what started to freak me out. He never seemed to react to the cold. It was getting into the 40s at night, and this dude was standing outside in just that thin jacket for hours, apparently. Never shivering, never shifting his weight, never even moving his hands to his pockets. But the worst part was his face. In those brief moments when the street light would stop flickering and actually illuminate him properly, I could see his expression. He wasn't just staring blankly. He looked expectant, like he was waiting for something specific to happen. By the second week, I was taking note of everything. I even started leaving work 5 minutes earlier or later, just to see if he'd still be there. Different times, same result. 3:25 a.m., 3:35 a.m., 3:40 a.m., didn't matter. He was always in position. This went on for almost 3 weeks. Every single night, there he was. I started mentioning it to my co-workers, but you know how that goes. Weird guy on my route home. Doesn't exactly make for compelling conversation. Most people just shrugged it off. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was building. You know that sensation you get right before a thunderstorm? That heavy electric feeling in the air? That's what driving down that street started to feel like. On October 15th. I remember the date because it was a Friday and I was looking forward to having the weekend off. I made a decision. Instead of just slowing down, I was going to stop. I was going to roll down my window and ask this guy what he was doing out there every night. As I approached the flickering streetlight, my heart was actually beating faster. I can't explain why, but every instinct I had was telling me to just keep driving, to not engage with this guy, to not break whatever weird routine we'd fallen into. But curiosity won out. I pulled over about 20 feet past the storm drain and put the car in park. In my side mirror, I could see him clearly, still in the same position, still staring ahead. I took a deep breath, rolled down my window, and called out, "Hey, you okay over there?" Nothing. No response, no acknowledgement. It was like I hadn't said anything at all. I tried again, louder this time. "Hey, man, everything all right?" That's when he moved. Not his whole body, just his head. Slowly, mechanically, he turned to look at me. And when I say look at me, I mean he locked eyes with me in my side mirror. Even from that distance, even with the flickering light, I could see his eyes reflecting like an animal's. We stared at each other for maybe 10 seconds. 10 seconds that felt like an hour. My hands were gripping the steering wheel, so tight my knuckles were white. Then he raised his arm. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted his right arm and pointed directly at me, not in my general direction, at me specifically, like he could see exactly where I was sitting in my car. I didn't even think. I threw the car in drive and floored it. In my rear view mirror, I watched him lower his arm and go back to his original position, like nothing had happened. I barely slept that weekend. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see that pointing finger, those reflecting eyes. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that it was just some harmless weirdo who got spooked when I called out to him. But Monday night, when I left work, I took the long way home. I couldn't bring myself to drive down Maple Street. I know it sounds crazy, but something about that interaction felt like a line had been crossed. Like whatever was happening there had escalated to a new level. Tuesday, I took the long way again. And Wednesday. But Thursday, I was running late and really didn't want to sit in traffic on the highway, so I convinced myself I was being ridiculous and took my usual route. The street light was still flickering, but nobody was standing next to the drain. I actually felt relieved. Maybe he'd finally moved on, found somewhere else to hang out, whatever. I slowed down a little as I passed, more out of habit than anything else, and that's when I noticed something white on my windshield. I figured it was just some trash that had blown onto my car during the day, so I didn't think much of it. But when I got home and went to brush it off, I realized it was a folded piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. My hands were shaking as I unfolded it. Written in block letters with what looked like pencil was a simple message. You look back. I didn't sleep at all that night. I kept going over every detail, trying to figure out how this guy could have known where I lived, how he could have gotten to my car without me seeing him. My apartment complex has security cameras, but I was too embarrassed to ask the management to check the footage. What was I gonna say? Some guy I'd been watching for 3 weeks left me a note? The next morning, I called the city's non-emergency line to report the broken streetlight, thinking maybe they'd send someone out and this whole thing would resolve itself. The woman I talked to was polite, but not particularly helpful. Maple Street, you said? Between which cross streets? I gave her the exact location. I'm not showing any open work orders for that area. Are you sure about the address? I drive past it every night. The light's been flickering for months. Well, I can file a report, but our records show that all the street lights on that stretch of Maple Street were inspected and repaired just last month. That afternoon, I decided to drive by during daylight hours. I'd only ever seen that street at night, and I wanted to get a better look at the area, maybe figure out where this guy might be coming from. What I found made my blood run cold. The street light was working perfectly. No flickering, no electrical issues, just a normal street light casting a normal shadow over a perfectly normal storm drain. In broad daylight, it looked like any other residential street. But that wasn't the worst part. Taped to the light pole was a missing person flyer. Faded and weather-beaten, probably been there for years. The photo showed a man in his 30s with messy hair, wearing a faded blue jacket. It was him. Same face, same jacket, same everything. The flyer was dated October 2011. The name was Marcus Chun, age 32. Last seen walking home from work on Maple Street. At the bottom, in smaller print, body recovered from storm drain system. Case closed. I stood there staring at that flyer for I don't know how long. Cars were driving past. People were walking their dogs. Completely normal afternoon stuff. But I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare. Marcus Chun had drowned in the storm drain system 12 years ago. The same storm drain where I've been seeing him every night for weeks. I took a picture of the flyer with my phone and drove straight home. I spent the rest of the day researching everything I could find about the case. According to news reports, Marcus had been walking home from his night shift at a packaging facility when a sudden storm flooded the drainage system. His body was found 3 days later, nearly a mile downstream from where he'd fallen in. The accident happened on October 15, 2011, the same date I had stopped and tried to talk to him. But here's what really messed me up. According to the police report, Marcus Chen's body was found wearing dark jeans and a faded blue jacket, the same clothes I'd seen him in every single night. I printed out everything I could find: news articles, police reports, even social media posts from his friends and family. I made a timeline, cross-referenced dates, did everything I could to convince myself I was losing my mind, because the alternative was accepting that I'd been staring at a dead man for 3 weeks. That night, I couldn't bring myself to drive down Maple Street. I took the highway, added 20 minutes to my commute, but I didn't care. I wasn't ready to face whatever was waiting for me there. For the next 2 weeks, I avoided Maple Street completely. I convinced myself that whatever was happening would just stop, that if I didn't engage with it, it would go away on its own. But on Halloween night, and I swear I'm not making this up for dramatic effect, it really was Halloween, I got stuck in construction traffic on the highway. What should have been a 20-minute drive turned into over an hour of sitting in barely moving traffic. By the time I got to the exit, it was almost 5 a.m. I was exhausted, frustrated, and just wanted to get home. Without really thinking about it, I took the turn toward Maple Street. I realized what I'd done about halfway there, but at that point, turning around would have taken even longer. I figured it was almost dawn anyway, and maybe in the early morning light, everything would seem less sinister. As I approached the storm drain, I could see the street light in the distance. It wasn't flickering, and there was nobody standing next to it. I felt this weird mixture of relief and disappointment. Part of me had wanted to see him again, just to confirm that the whole thing had been real. But as I got closer, I realized the light wasn't just not flickering. It was completely dark, burned out. I slowed down as I passed, peering into the shadows around the drain. Nothing, just empty sidewalk and the quiet hum of early morning traffic on distant streets. But as I drove away, something made me glance in my rear-view mirror one more time. He was there, standing in the same spot, arms at his sides, head tilted. But this time, he was facing the opposite direction. Instead of staring at oncoming traffic, he was looking at cars driving away, looking at me. I floored it. I don't care how that sounds. I was not staying to see what happened next. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel in my throat, and my hands were slipping on the steering wheel from sweat. When I got home, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, just breathing and trying to process what I'd seen. I kept telling myself it was a trick of the light, that I was so tired I was hallucinating, that there had to be some rational explanation. But when I finally got out of the car, there was another note on my windshield. This time, it wasn't folded. It was just a single sheet of paper with 2 words written in the same block letters. Keep driving. I looked around the parking lot, but it was completely empty. No sign of anyone who could have left a note. No footprints in the dew on the ground around my car. Nothing. I took the note inside and compared it to the first one. Same handwriting, same pencil, same paper. But how was that possible? I'd driven straight home from Maple Street, and the note had been there when I arrived. There's no way someone could have beat me in my apartment, left a note, and disappeared without me seeing them, unless they were already waiting for me. Over the next few days, I tried to convince myself that someone was playing an elaborate prank on me. Maybe a co-worker who knew my route home. Maybe a neighbor who'd seen me acting paranoid. It was the only explanation that made any sense. But then weird things started happening at work. My security radio, which had worked perfectly for 2 years, started cutting out every night around 3:30 a.m. Just static for a few minutes, then back to normal. The maintenance guy checked it twice, but couldn't find any problems. My flashlight started flickering at random intervals, even with fresh batteries. The building's electrical system had a couple of minor glitches. Lights going out in sections I just inspected, motion sensors triggering in empty rooms. Nothing major, nothing that couldn't be explained by normal wear and tear or electrical issues. But the timing was too consistent to ignore. Everything started happening around 3:30 a.m., right when I would normally be driving past a storm drain. A week later, I decided to test something. Instead of taking the highway home, I drove to a 24-hour diner about 10 minutes from my apartment and ordered coffee. I sat in a booth facing the parking lot, where I could see my car through the window. At exactly 3:33 a.m., my car alarm went off. I ran outside, but there was nobody around. No other cars in the parking lot. No people on the street, nothing. The car was locked, undamaged, and when I popped the hood, everything looked normal. But tucked under the windshield wiper was another note. You can't hide. That's when I realized this wasn't going to stop. Whatever was happening, avoiding Maple Street wasn't making it go away. It was just making it follow me everywhere else. So on November 15th, exactly 1 month after my first interaction with Marcus Chun, I made a decision. I was going to drive down Maple Street. I was going to stop at the storm drain, and I was going to end this once and for all. I left work at my usual time, but instead of dreading the drive home, I felt this weird sense of determination. I'd spent weeks being scared of something I didn't understand, and I was tired of jumping at shadows and looking over my shoulder. As I turned onto Maple Street, I could see the streetlight in the distance. It was flickering again, casting that same jerky, strobing light over the storm drain. And he was there. Same position, same clothes, same everything, like the past month had never happened. But this time, I didn't slow down as I approached. I didn't try to get a better look. I drove at normal speed, staring straight ahead, following the message from the last note. I kept driving. As I passed the storm drain, I caught a glimpse of him in my peripheral vision. He didn't move, didn't turn his head, didn't acknowledge my car at all. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was invisible to him. And you know what? It worked. I drove home without incident. No notes on my windshield. No weird electrical problems. No sense of being watched. For 3 days, everything was completely normal. I thought I'd figured it out. As long as I didn't engage with him, as long as I just kept driving and didn't look back, everything would be fine. I was wrong. On the 4th night, my radio cut out again. But this time, instead of static, I heard something else. A voice. Faint, distorted, but definitely human. You should have kept driving. It was barely a whisper, and it only lasted a few seconds before the normal radio frequency came back. I convinced myself I'd imagined it, that my brain was playing tricks on me, because I was so focused on this whole situation. But the next night, it happened again. Same time, same voice, same message. You should have kept driving. By the 3rd night, I was recording on my phone, trying to capture evidence of what I was hearing. And I got it. 5 seconds of clear audio. That same whispered voice coming to my security radio. You should have kept driving. I played it back a dozen times. There was no mistaking it. Someone or something was using my radio to communicate with me. But the frequency was supposed to be secure, encrypted, limited to the security company's equipment. I brought the recording to my supervisor, but he just looked at me like I was losing my mind. Sounds like interference from another station, he said. Happens sometimes with older equipment. But I knew it wasn't interference. The voice was too clear, too deliberate, and always happened at exactly the same time. I started doing more research on Marcus Chun, trying to understand why this was happening to me specifically. What I found made everything so much worse. According to the original police reports, which I was able to access through some questionable internet searches, Marcus hadn't just fallen into the storm drain accidentally. The investigation had initially been classified as suspicious death because of several unusual factors. First, the storm that night hadn't been particularly severe. The drainage system flooding was unexpected and localized to just a few blocks around Maple Street. Second, witnesses reported seeing Marcus arguing with someone near the storm drain about 30 minutes before his body was found. But despite extensive interviews, police never identified who he'd been talking to. Third, and this is the part that really got to me, Marcus's car was found parked 3 blocks away from where he died. His keys were still in his pocket, and there was no indication of why he would have been walking in that area instead of driving home. But here's the detail that made my blood run cold. According to the coroner's report, Marcus Chun had drowned, but there were also signs of blunt force trauma to his head. The official cause of death was listed as accidental drowning, but the investigating officer noted that the head injury was consistent with either a fall or impact with a blunt object. Someone had hurt Marcus Chun, and whoever it was had never been caught. I spent the next few days obsessing over every detail of the case, and that's when I noticed something that had been staring me in the face the whole time. My route home from work took me down the exact same stretch of Maple Street, where Marcus Chun had died. But more than that, I worked at a warehouse complex that, 12 years ago, had housed a packaging facility where Marcus worked his night shift. I'd been driving the same route Marcus drove, at the same time Marcus drove it, past the same spot where Marcus had died, and I'd been doing it for almost 2 years without realizing the connection. But there was more. I pulled up the employee records from 2011, which were archived in the building's administrative office. Marcus Chun had worked security, just like me, same shift, same schedule, same responsibilities. I was living his exact routine. The realization hit me like a physical weight. This wasn't random. Marcus wasn't just some generic ghost haunting a random street corner. He was trying to communicate with someone who would understand, someone who was walking the same path he'd walked. But that raised an even more terrifying question. If Marcus had been murdered and whoever killed him was never caught, was I in danger too? That night, I seriously considered calling in sick. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to stay home, to break the pattern, to not drive down Maple Street. But I also knew that avoidance hadn't worked before. And now that I understood the connection, I felt like I owed it to Marcus to at least try to understand what he was trying to tell me. I left work at my usual time, but instead of dreading the drive home, I felt a strange sense of purpose. Whatever was going to happen, I was going to face it head on. As I approached the storm drain, I could see Marcus in his usual position, but something was different. Instead of staring straight ahead at oncoming traffic, he was looking down at the drain itself. His head was tilted at a more severe angle, and his arms weren't quite at his sides. They were slightly forward, like he was reaching for something. I slowed down as I passed, really studying his posture. And for just a moment, as the streetlights stopped flickering, I could see his face clearly. He looked terrified. Not blank, not expectant, not waiting. Terrified, like he was reliving the moment of his death over and over again. I pulled over about 50 feet past the drain and sat there with the engine running, trying to decide what to do. In my rear-view mirror, I could see Marcus still in the same position, head down, arms reaching. That's when I noticed a car. A dark sedan, maybe a Honda or Toyota, was parked on the opposite side of the street with its headlights off. I hadn't seen it approach, and I couldn't make out anyone in the driver's seat, but something about it felt wrong. As I watched, the sedan's engine started. No headlights, just the quiet rumble of an engine turning over. Then, slowly, it began to move toward the storm drain. I don't know what possessed me to do what I did next. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was some protective instinct from Marcus, but I put my car in reverse and backed up toward the storm drain. The sedan stopped about 20 feet away from Marcus. A figure got out, tall, wearing dark clothes, moving with deliberate care. In the flickering streetlight, I couldn't make out any details, but I could see them approaching Marcus's position. Marcus didn't react. He just kept staring down at the drain, arms slightly extended, reliving whatever had happened to him 12 years ago. The figure reached Marcus and seemed to be talking to him, gesturing toward the storm drain. Even from my car, I could sense aggression in their body language, sharp, aggressive movements, getting closer to Marcus's personal space. That's when I realized what I was seeing. This wasn't just a ghost story. This was a replay. Marcus was showing me how he died, and whoever killed him was still here, still repeating the same pattern. I grabbed my phone and started recording, but the streetlight was flickering too badly to get clear footage. In the strobing light, the figures looked like they were moving in slow motion, like an old film reel skipping frames. The dark figure raised their arm, the same motion I'd seen Marcus make when he pointed at me weeks ago. But this wasn't pointing. This was striking. Marcus collapsed toward the storm drain, and the figure quickly got back in their car and drove away without turning on their headlights. But Marcus didn't disappear. He slowly got back up, returned to his original position, and the whole scene started over again. I was watching a man relive his murder every single night. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, watching the scene repeat itself over and over. Marcus would stand in position. The dark sedan would arrive. The figure would approach. They would argue. Marcus would be struck and fall. The killer would leave, and Marcus would reset. An endless loop of the worst night of his life. But as I was getting ready to drive away, something changed. The dark sedan, instead of leaving after the scene played out, turned around and started driving in my direction. Slowly, deliberately, like they'd noticed my car and were coming to investigate. I didn't wait to see what would happen. I floored it, tires squealing as I peeled out and raced toward the main highway. In my rear-view mirror, I could see headlights following me, keeping pace but not getting closer. They followed me for about 2 miles before disappearing down a side street. I drove straight to the nearest 24-hour gas station and sat in the parking lot under the brightest lights I could find, hands shaking as I tried to process what I'd just seen. Marcus Chun hadn't just died in that storm drain. He'd been murdered, and somehow his killer was still out there, still connected to that place, still dangerous. But why had Marcus been trying to warn me? Why the notes, the pointing, the escalating contact? The answer hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd been driving the same route at the same time in the same type of car Marcus had driven. To his killer, I probably looked like the perfect next victim. Marcus hadn't been trying to scare me. He'd been trying to save me. The next morning, I went to police. I brought everything. The notes, the recording, the research I'd done on Marcus Chen's death, even the blurry phone video I'd managed to capture. The detective I spoke was polite but skeptical. Sir, Marcus Chen's case was closed 12 years ago. Are you saying you have new evidence of foul play? I tried to explain about the nightly appearances, the pattern, what I'd witnessed, but I could see in his eyes that he thought I was having some kind of breakdown. Ghost sightings aren't exactly admissible evidence. Look, he finally said, if you're genuinely concerned about your safety, we can increase patrols in that area. But as for reopening a 12-year-old accidental death case based on what you've told me, I'm not sure how to help you there. I left the police station feeling more frustrated than ever. I had the truth, but no way to prove it that anyone would believe. That night, I made a decision. I was going to end this, one way or another, if Marcus was trapped in an endless loop of his murder, and if his killer was still out there hunting for new victims, then someone needed to break the cycle. I left work early, around 2 a.m., and drove straight to Maple Street. But instead of just passing through, I parked on a side street where I could see the storm drain, but remain hidden. At exactly 3:30 a.m., Marcus appeared. Same position, same clothes, same terrified expression as he stared down at the drain. At 3:33 a.m., the dark sedan arrived. This time I was ready. As the figure got out of the sedan and approached Marcus, I started my car and drove straight toward them with my headlights on full beam and my horn blaring. The figure spun around, startled by the sudden light and noise. For just a moment, I got a clear look at their face. Middle-aged, male, completely ordinary looking. The kind of person you'd pass on the street without a second thought. But their eyes, there was something wrong with their eyes. They weren't just surprised or annoyed by my interference. They looked furious, like I'd ruined something important to them. They quickly got back in their sedan and drove off, but not before I managed to get their license plate number. A real, physical, recordable piece of evidence. Marcus turned to look at me as I pulled up next to the storm drain. For the first time in all the weeks I'd been seeing him, he looked directly at my face instead of just staring through me, and he smiled. Not a creepy ghost smile, not something terrifying, just a genuine expression of gratitude and relief. Like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He raised his hand, not pointing this time, but waving, a simple goodbye. Then he faded away, and I knew I'd never see him again. The license plate led to a man named David Kruger, 54, who worked as a maintenance supervisor for the city's drainage department. He'd had access to the storm drain system, knew when and where flooding was likely to occur, and had a record of minor assault charges going back 20 years. When police searched his house, they found a collection of souvenirs from Marcus Chun, his wallet, his watch, even his work ID badge. Apparently, Kruger had been returning to the scene of his crime every year on the anniversary of Marcus's death, reliving his own twisted version of that night. The case was reopened, and Kruger was eventually convicted of second-degree murder. He's serving 15 to 25 years, and based on what they found in his house, there may have been other victims over the years. Marcus Chin finally got justice. As for me, I still work the same job, still drive home the same route. But now when I pass that storm drain, the streetlight works perfectly, and there's never anyone standing there. Sometimes, late at night when I'm making my rounds at work, I'll hear something on my radio that sounds almost like a voice saying, "Thank you." But it's probably just interference from another station. Probably. Look, I know how this sounds. I know most people would say I had some kind of breakdown, that the stress of working nights and driving alone got to me, and I imagined the whole thing. Maybe they're right. Maybe there's a rational explanation for everything that happened. But David Kruger is in prison. Marcus Chen's family finally has closure. And I'm still here, still safe, still driving home every night without looking over my shoulder. Sometimes that's enough. If you're ever driving alone late at night and you see something that doesn't feel right, trust your instincts. Pay attention to the patterns. And remember, sometimes the dead aren't trying to scare us. Sometimes they're trying to save us.